Hi guys, and welcome to another Logic Pro X tutorial, and I'm going to be doing these smart controls today. Okay, there's actually a lot to look at with these. They're deeper than you think, so this will be quite a long one. The smart controls, they're a live performance tool, and you only use them for doing special live performance techniques and tricks. Okay, such as, I have a synth here, and the filter is being modulated or wobbled by a LFO like that. Okay, then down here on the smart control panel I've got the speed of the LFO rate assigned to this smart controller, but I'm passing that through a custom scaling map, and therefore I can jump with these big steps I've created between three different values, an eighth dotted, an eighth and an eighth triplet, bypassing the values in between. And I only have these three values because I'm also restricting the minimum and maximum range for the LFO rate. Okay, so I can do this. So, you know, I can jump around between those three different speeds of LFO, which is a special performance technique, right? Or trick. Okay, so smart controls. Let's get into them. So there's a lot to look at here. Okay, now these smart controls, they are a live performance tool that's been brought into Logic from MainStage, which is a live performance app. Here is Apple's MainStage web page. Okay, there's a smart control panel. There's a smart control panel. There's a smart control panel. And there's a smart control panel. Okay, so these smart controls, they are a live performance tool. They've been brought into Logic from MainStage, and as I said, we only use them to do special performance orientated techniques or tricks. When I say performance, I mean either manipulating the sound, changing the sound live at a gig in real time where you're using Logic on a laptop, or performance as in writing in track automation in real time, which is a performance task. Okay, otherwise we don't use the smart controls. Okay, now when you load a channel strip preset from the library, every single one loads its own smart control panel. These smart controls load up with the channel strip presets. They are part of the channel strip presets. So the beginner loads up a channel strip preset from the library and sees the smart controls and thinks, well, let me just put some MIDI on here. And they think, oh well, these smart controls, I use these to edit my sound, to change my sound, because when I move these things I can hear the sound being changed. Etc. Yeah, so the beginner thinks, well, I use these smart controls to edit and change the sound of my channel strip preset, but no you don't. Okay, yes, as a beginner you can, if you want, move these parameters and you'll hear things change. Each smart control panel gives you some basic fundamental parameters which when you move them changes the sound. Okay, but really you don't get access to any real depth of editing when you use these smart controls. Like, for example, on here we have these two smart controls labelled ambience and reverb. Now if you look over there on the channel strip, all they're doing is these two smart controls, they're simply adjusting the two sends on the channel strip. So why do it here? Why bother turning up or down the two sends here when you can just reach over there to the channel strip itself and adjust your sends there? And then the same for the synth on this channel strip. We just get 5 parameters. Okay, these parameters will change something. You can hear that when you mess with them, but you don't have access to really any depth of editing parameters, and you don't know what these parameters are doing unless you are more experienced, and you get no parameter feedback, etc. So it's much easier to just open up your synth and edit the parameters here, where you get full parameter feedback in the form of numbers and graphics, and you get access to all your edit features. Okay. So for just editing the channel strip preset, the sound, and I'm not talking about writing in any track automation now, just editing the sound, there's no real point to using the smart controls. Okay, so what about using the smart controls for writing in track automation moves? Smart controls are a live performance tool, right? writing in track automation is a real-time performance task, right? So do we use the smart controls for writing in track automation? Well, the answer is sometimes. We'd only turn to the smart controls if we're doing some specialist technique or trick. Okay, if we're writing single parameters of track automation in a normal way, then the tool that we should always turn to first is the Automation Quick Access Controller. Okay, which lives here. Look, Logic Pro Preferences Automation. Okay, here it is, Automation Quick Access. Now you just switch it on, and this box pops up. And if this box doesn't pop up, then you just click Learn Message down here, right? But if it does, you click Assign. Okay, so you click Assign or Learn Message, and then you move any hardware controller on your system and click Done. Done. Okay. Now the hardware controller that you moved, that is now set up as your Automation Quick Access hardware controller, whether it was a wheel, a slider, a pot, or even a pedal. Okay, that is now your Automation Quick Access hardware controller, and now any single parameter of track automation that you choose from the lists here, and these lists are the parameters for everything on the channel strip, okay, any parameter you choose from here is automatically assigned to that hardware controller that you just set up, your Automation Quick Access controller. So you use that, you just go retro synth, filter, cutoff, and you're controlling the cutoff, and you can write it in with the Automation Quick Access controller, and it writes in really nice smooth moves. You can change it, retro synth, filter, envelope, decay. I'm now writing in the envelope decay for the filter. Easy peasy. Any parameter you choose from your track automation list here. Main, pan, I'm going to write the pan in now. Yeah, easy peasy, yeah? Just reset the pan there. Any parameter. Channel EQ, peak 3 frequency, I'm writing that in. I'm writing in my peak 3 frequency sweeps. You see, so your Automation Quick Access controller is your go-to tool for writing in single parameters of track automation in a straightforward way. Okay, it's the number one tool, it's the boss, it's the daddy, you know what I mean? Okay. We only turn to the smart controls, as I say, to do some more different, out of the ordinary technique, like a specialist technique or trick, such as, if we look at these smart controls and open up the editor, look here, this smart control here labelled delay. Okay, we can see here in the parameter mapping, this smart control labelled delay is assigned to two parameters, the stereo delay left and right mix. Now this pot therefore can adjust both those parameters at the same time. Now you can't do that with the Automation Quick Access controller. That only controls and writes in track automation for a single parameter at a time in a straightforward way. So we turn to the smart controls here to write in two or more parameters. That's a special technique. And now I can write in the left and right mix for the delay from a single controller, either with the mouse, by just moving the smart control with the mouse, and it writes nice and smooth, just like the Automation Quick Access controller. I can either write in with the mouse like that, or I can go to the further step of assigning a hardware controller to this smart control by just clicking Learn down here on the external assignment, moving a hardware controller on my system, and now I can write in those two parameters with a hardware controller like that. Nice smooth moves. Okay, so you see there we're turning to the smart controls to do a special technique, writing in multiple parameters at the same time from a single controller. Okay, now another way that you turn to the smart controls is if you were writing a single parameter, but where you're using the additional smart controls, the minimum and maximum range, the invert, scaling, okay, where you're using those extra smart parameters so that when you write your single parameter of track automation, the extra parameters are somehow modifying that write to do a special technique or trick. And that's the only time you use the smart controls. Okay, as I say, for all your standard writing in of single parameters of track automation, just go straight to your Automation Quick Access controller, because it's automatically assigned to any parameter you choose, and it's easier than writing in with the mouse. That's the one to use. Okay, alright. So like that's when you should and shouldn't use the smart controls. Okay, so let's get into them in a bit more depth. Okay, so as I say, every time you load a channel strip preset from the library, each channel strip preset loads its own smart control panel. Okay, these smart control panels are part of the channel strip presets. Now we can edit these smart control panels, and therefore we can save them, the ones we've edited, by simply saving the channel strip preset that the smart controls belong to. Okay, now these smart controls come in different designs, different looks, different layouts. We have instrument ones, audio ones, bus ones, and output ones. Okay, let's quickly look at those. Instrument ones change. There are different designs depending on the type of instrument. Okay, synthesizers, you usually get either the wood look, vintage like that, or this black modern look like that. And they come in 6, 8, 10 and 12 pot varieties. Okay, but no matter what type of panel you're looking at, what type of layout or design, they never have more than 12 smart control pots. Okay, so your synths have this black modern look or the wood look, and then B3s have this drawbar look, your clavies get a wood look, electric pianos, basses and guitars get a scratch plate looking thing or an acoustic version, wood. Here's guitar look, acoustic guitar, electric guitar. Pianos get a gloss black with gold. Your drum machines, no matter what type of drum machine you load, it's always got the 909 looking panel. Okay, etc, etc. Orchestral, I ain't got all the content, but like, you know, wood look for the strings and a tube thing for the for the brass, etc. Okay, so we get different instruments, get different types of panel design according to the type of instrument you're loading. Okay. Now audio ones are always blue, unless the audio channel strip you've loaded is an electric guitar one, and then you get a sort of guitar amp looking smart control panel. Okay, and there are different designs, etc. Okay, but all your normal audio channel strip presets have the blue look like that. Then your buses are red and your outputs are silver. Okay, it's as simple as that. Now, as I say, we can edit these smart control panels and then save the edit that we did by saving the channel strip preset that the smart control panel belongs to. So let's look at that, and then we'll look at the controls and everything in more detail. Okay, so here I've got the analog polysynth channel strip preset loaded. Look, analog polysynth, and it always loads this panel. Let's change it. We open up the editor here. And at the top it says automatic smart controls, and if we drop the list, these are all the different layouts. Okay, some of them have numbers afterwards telling you how many pots are going to be on that layout, but these are all the different layouts or panel designs. Now notice at the top automatic smart controls is ticked, and that means that we're looking at the automatic assignment, the automatic smart control that's been set up by Logic when we loaded the preset. This is ticked because we haven't edited or messed with this panel. And then down here, Vintage Synth 8 is ticked because that's the layout we're looking at. Vintage Synth 8 with 8 pots. Okay, so let's change it. If I change it to another panel layout design with 8 pots, okay, because this one has 8, the default that we've got has 8, so if I change it to another 8 pot one, I won't lose any of these parameters, and I can always go back to my original 8 pot layout, Vintage Synth 8. So I'll switch it to Modern Synth 8, and I keep the same parameters. I'll change it to Soundscape 8, I keep the same parameters. I'll change it to Generic Black 8, and I keep the same parameters. And because I've just switched from one 8 pot layout to another 8 pot layout, I can go back to my original Vintage Synth 8 and I don't lose any parameters. Okay, notice now that we've messed with the panel, changed it, automatic smart controls is no longer ticked. Okay, so if I start with an 8 pot design and I switch to a different 8 pot design, I can always go back to my original, I don't lose parameters. But as soon as I start messing with the amount of pots, like for example I'll switch to Soundscape 10, I gain 2 extra pots. Then I try and go back to my original Vintage Synth 8 and I've lost some parameters. Okay, so you know, you start messing around with the amount of pots in the panel design. When you change it, you often lose parameters. Now you might think that all you've got to do when that happens is just re-tick automatic smart controls and Logic will rebuild this panel back to the default. Well, it does rebuild it, yes, watch, click, boom. But it rebuilds it completely randomly. Like now we've got 12 pots and completely different parameters. So if you want to get back the default panel that goes with the channel strip preset, you just have to reload the channel strip preset like that. Well, now we've got the default panel back for analog polysynth, which is Modern Synth 8 with those parameters. Okay, so let's change the panel and I'll show you that and how to save, and then we'll get into the parameters and everything, the mapping on a deeper level. I'm going to change this panel to Soundscape 12. Here we go. Boom. I keep the original 8 parameters, but I gain 4 extra smart controls that are unmapped. Let's get these set up on something. So here we go. I'll open the channel EQ and I'm going to isolate my low and high shelf. I'm going to assign those, the low and high shelf EQ, to these 4 pots. Okay, so I switch on Learn. This unmapped pot is selected. Learn is switched on. I click the low shelf frequency. Boom. Now down here below parameter mapping there, look. See that there? Channel EQ low shelf frequency. It has been assigned correctly, but sadly Logic has ballsed up the title on the smart control panel. It's called it release. Okay, well never mind, we'll fix that afterwards. That happens sometimes. Okay, so now I'm going to highlight this smart control. Learn is still on, and I'm going to click the low frequency gain. Click, done. It's assigned low shelf gain. Okay, learn is still on. Choose this pot. High shelf frequency. Click on it. Done. It's assigned high shelf frequency, but the pot has been incorrectly labelled. We'll deal with that, as I say, in a minute. Okay, learn is still on. I click this pot. That's highlighted now. Learn is still on, and I click the high shelf gain. Click, done. Channel EQ, high shelf gain. Turn off learn. Okay, so now these 4 pots are assigned to the low shelf frequency and gain, high shelf frequency and gain, and we just have to rename these 2 controls, which Logic cocked up the titling for. I don't know why it called it release and delay. I don't know. But anyway, let's change that. We do it here, the title. Okay, so this is the low shelf frequency. Done. And this is the high shelf frequency. High shelf frequency. Done. Now they're labelled properly. Okay, so we've got now on this smart control panel, we have got a low and high shelf EQ, cut or boost, cut or boost, each one with its own frequency selector. Okay, done. Let's save that. Okay. Now to save, we just save the channel strip preset. So we go to the library, and we do save. Boom, save. And Logic prompts us to save in the user patches location. Not into the factory library location, but into the user patches location, which is here in the library, user patches. Now, I don't want to save into the user patches location, because if I save this analog polysynth channel strip preset with my modified panel into user patches, it's going to be mixed in with all these other user patches, drums and synths and audio channel strips and everything. I don't want that. I want to save my modified channel strip preset with my modified panel into synthesizer classics alongside the original analog polysynth. Now this is a factory location. Instrument, synthesizer, classics. To save there, we go save, root disk, library, application support, Logic, patches, instrument, synthesizer, classics. Then I can save into the factory location. But I mean, what a faff to do that. Now if I'm continually tweaking my smart control panel and the channel strip as well, and I want to keep on saving it, tweaking, save, I don't want to every single time have to go, you know, oh my god, root disk, library, application support, Logic, patches, instrument, synthesizer, classics, and then save. So what I do is if I'm continually tweaking and saving, a particular channel strip preset into the library location, the factory library location, I drag the folder, in this case classics, and drop it into my favourites here. Now I've already done that, and I've also made a shortcut to the main logic factory folder there, so I can go to a different subfolder if I want. Okay, so the factory location I want to save to, instrument synthesizer classics, I've dragged that folder to my favourites, which is like shortcuts here. And now anytime I want to tweak, save, I just go save classics, and I'm right in the factory location. Now I'll save it as analog polysynth EQ. Save, bang, done. And now if I refresh my library, come on, there it is. There's the original analog polysynth with its default 8-pot panel, and here's my edit right next to it, analog polysynth EQ with my high and low shelf EQ. So that's how you modify a panel and save it in the factory location, so it's inside the factory location along with the original, or you could have overwritten the original if you wanted to. Okay, so that's like how you change the panels and save a modified panel. Let's now get into the actual controls on these panels and the parameters on a bit of a deeper level. Okay, let me just switch back to the original analog polysynth. There we go. Okay, let's open up the editor, parameter mapping, and I'm going to choose this smart control here labelled detune. If we look at the parameter mapping here, we can see that this smart control is assigned to a single parameter, the retro synth oscillator 2 detune. Okay, that's a single parameter. If we click on this parameter row, we open this menu, and there are some basic menu controls and also this list. Okay, now this smart control is assigned to a single parameter. If we want to change that single parameter that this control is assigned to, then we do it in one of two ways. Either we open up the menu and we choose a new value from the list, retro synth, filter, cutoff for example. We can do it like that. Or we can do learn, and we can click on any parameter on any of the GUIs, either the synth or any of the plugins, or on a parameter on the actual channel strip itself. So I can click, for example, with learn switched on here, I can click on the resonance here, and now this smart control is assigned to the resonance for its mapping. Or I can click learn and open my channel EQ and click on the peak 3 frequency, and now that's assigned. I'm controlling the peak 3 frequency. Or with learn still on, I can click the fader. Okay, now this smart control is assigned to my volume fader for the channel. Okay, so you can use the learn and click on a parameter, or you can drop the list down and choose a value from here. Retro synth, filter, cutoff. Okay, now where I have a single parameter assigned to a smart control and I change that single parameter for any other single parameter, the position of the smart control is irrelevant. Okay, this smart control can be at any position you like when you change from one to another single parameter. Okay, that's important, and I'll show you why. Watch this. Let's open the synth. Okay, I'm going to relabel this smart control. I'm going to call it multi, so we don't get confused, because I'm now going to assign another parameter to this smart control. To do that, I go to the current parameter row here and I click to open the menu and I do add mapping. Boom. I've added now a second row which is labelled unmapped because currently it's not assigned to anything. Now I select which row I'm editing by clicking on the little block on the left of each row with the little dots on, and you can also use that block to grab and drag the order of the rows around. Okay, so I choose the unmapped row. Now watch this. I'm going to put this smart control, which is currently controlling the cutoff only because it's the only parameter that's assigned at the moment, right? It's controlling the cutoff, right? Look at the cutoff up here go. I'm going to put this smart control to 12 o'clock. I'm going to reduce the resonance down to 0, its lowest level, its lowest value. Now with the smart control at 12 o'clock and the resonance set to 0, its lowest value, and with this second parameter row selected, I'm going to click learn, click on resonance and assign it to the resonance. Boom, done. I've assigned the resonance to this smart control, but the smart controller was at 12 o'clock when I assigned the resonance with a value of 0. Therefore, when I turn up this smart control, nothing happens until I hit 12 o'clock, and then the resonance begins at 0 and works up from there, 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Below 12 o'clock, the resonance doesn't move because I've gone past its lowest value. Its lowest value is set at 12 o'clock because that's where the pot was when I assigned the resonance at its lowest value of 0. So when I move this pot up now, only the cutoff works until I hit 12 o'clock, then the resonance kicks in and goes up from there. Okay, so do you see that? The position of the smart control is relevant when you're adding a parameter, when you're adding your second or subsequent parameters. Okay, only when there's more than one parameter is the position of the smart controller relevant when you change or add a parameter. Okay, very important because you can use that to do techniques. Also, if you're not aware of that, you can get into all sorts of problems. You can kind of assign, you're not really watching where this smart control is, and you assign resonance to it, and then you think, well, hang on, I'm turning up. Why is the resonance not turning up? It's not turning up because your pot was at 12 o'clock when you assigned it, so it won't start coming on till 12. To fix that, if you want the resonance to turn up from the very beginning all the way up to the very top, okay, you've got to delete this parameter row, the resonance. Okay, highlight it, bring up the menu, delete, add mapping again to create another unmapped row, turn this smart control all the way down to its lowest, completely anti-clockwise, make sure the resonance is at its lowest as well, 0, and with this unmapped row selected, learn and click the resonance. Okay, now the resonance will begin at the smart control's lowest level, fully counterclockwise, off at a value of 0, its lowest value. There we go, I turn up and the resonance turns up from the very beginning of the travel of the pot. Okay. Okay, do you understand that? Okay, the position of the smart control is relevant, as is the parameter value when you're assigning your second, third, fourth or other subsequent values. But the position of the pot is not relevant where there is only a single parameter and you're changing that parameter for another single parameter. Okay. Alrighty, let's move on and look at some other stuff. Okay, let's look at this minimum and maximum range next. They're useful. Okay, I'll choose this parameter mapping here, the resonance, and get rid of it. Bring up the menu, delete mapping. Okay, now there's only one parameter now assigned to this smart control, so the position of the smart control pot does not matter when I change the parameter. Okay, let's open the channel EQ. I'm going to isolate the peak 3 band, boost it up a bit, narrow the Q slightly. Okay, with this smart control selected, I do learn, click on the frequency, the peak 3 frequency, boom, it's assigned. Now, as I say, the smart control, there's only one parameter, so the position of this pot when I assign the peak 3 frequency is irrelevant. Now when I move this pot, this smart control, it's moving the peak 3 frequency across its entire range from 20 Hz up to 2000 Hz. I'm going to use the minimum and maximum range to reduce that movement. I don't want to sweep the EQ down too low, and I don't want to sweep it up too high. Let me put a little MIDI pattern on here. Okay. As I sweep the EQ, it only really does anything from around here to around there. Okay, up above 5K, 4.5K, it doesn't really do anything, and down below sort of 150 Hz, it doesn't really do anything. So I'm going to restrict its range. So I go here to the minimum range and I ram it up the minimum range to 150. It won't go below 150 when I turn it down. Turn it all the way down. Come on, 150. It won't go below 150. Turn it up, and I want to restrict the upper range, the maximum range. Let's reduce the maximum range to 4,000. Come on, 4,000. So now when I move this smart control, it's moving the EQ, sweeping it between 150 Hz and 4K, 4000. So I've got it assigned to a hardware controller. So when I'm moving it with my hardware control or with the mouse, I don't have to worry when I turn it down. I don't have to sort of go, oh, I mustn't turn it down below 150. And when I turn it up, I'm sort of not moving the pot and thinking, oh, I've got to make sure I don't turn it up above 4K. Yeah, I just move the pot, and when it's rammed all the way down, I know I'm at about 150. And when I ram it all the way up, I know I'm at about 4K. Yeah, I've restricted the range so I can freely move the pot and knowing I won't go over 4K or below 150. Yeah, cool. So minimum maximum range, very useful. Let's look at that in another context. We go to this delay smart control here, and earlier we looked at that. It was assigned to the left-right mix of the delay on the channel. Okay, now when we move the smart control, it's, as you can see, turning up and down the left-right mix. Okay, now, but when we turn it up fully, both sides are not going above 35k. That's because they both got a maximum range. Both parameters here have both got a maximum range of 35. So I want the delay mix to turn up higher than that. So I'm going to change this. I can change by dragging, using the arrows up, down, or highlighting and typing. So I'll type in 80. Enter, and then for this one, highlight 80, enter. Okay, now the minimum maximum range for the left-right mix of the delay goes from 0 to 80%. Okay, now watch something else. Again, the position of the pot is relevant if we add any more parameters, because we're working with more than one parameter. So watch. I'm going to do add mapping and add one unmapped row. Then another one, add mapping, 2 unmapped rows. I'm going to turn the cross feedback right down and the right feedback and the left feedback so that everything's at 0. Now I'm going to put the smart control pot at 12 o'clock. It's already assigned to the left-right mix, so at 12 o'clock the left-right mix is at 40%. I highlight the first unmapped parameter row. Okay, my smart control is at 12 o'clock. Left and right feedback are completely down at 0%. Learn. Click on the left feedback, choose the next unmapped row. Learn is still on. Click on the right feedback. Learn. They're both assigned. The left and right feedback are now assigned. Left and right feedback are assigned to this smart controller, but they were assigned at a value of 0% each is at 0%, and they were assigned when the smart control was at 12 o'clock. Now what do you think is going to happen? Well, of course, as I use the smart control, as I turn up from its fully off position counterclockwise, it is only turning up the left-right mix. Only these two values are going to be changed, and the left and right feedback will not start coming on until the pot reaches 12 o'clock. Then at 12 o'clock the left and right feedback start turning up from 0%. So you can use that again. There's another example of where the position of the pot can be used as a technique when you add in subsequent parameters. Now, as I turn up, I don't get the left and right feedback coming on until the very end of the travel of my left-right mix. So only at the highest levels of mix does my feedback come on. Okay, let me delete that and put it. Oops, sorry. Delete. Okay, delete. Okay, we're just back to the left-right mix now. Okay, I'll turn the smart control all the way down, and add in 2 more empty rows of mapping. Okay, the smart control is all the way down, left and right feedback are at 0. Highlight one unmapped row, learn, click on left feedback. Highlight the next unmapped row, learn is still on, click the right feedback. Okay, I've assigned the left-right feedback again, but now I did it when the smart control was down at the bottom here at 0, fully counterclockwise. So as I turn up, as soon as the smart control starts moving from its lowest position, the left and right feedback are going to come on as well as the left-right mix. Okay, now I don't want my left-right feedback to go all the way up to 99% because I'd just get overload. So let's restrict the maximum range for the left-right feedback. Let's set that to 80 for each one. 80. Okay, so now when I turn up, the smart control called delay. My left right mix turns up from 0 to 80, and my left right feedback turns up from 0 to 80. But when I turn down, okay, I don't want them both to turn off completely. So let's set a minimum range for both. Left mix, let's set the minimum range to 20. Right mix, let's set the minimum range to 20, and now the left right mix won't go below 20%. So when I turn the pot fully down, I don't completely turn off my echo. It's subtle. And now the same for the left right feedback. Let's set their minimum range to 20 so that they don't completely turn off either. 20, there we are. Now when I move this pot now, I turn it all the way counterclockwise. My left right mix for the echo, for the delay, turns down to 20%. Very, very low, but it's got 20% feedback as well. As I turn up, I get more mix and more feedback. Bit more. More mix and more feedback. And at the highest level, more mix and more feedback still. Okay. So you can see how you can use the minimum maximum range, okay? Now one thing we could do is we could ping pong the left right mix, just invert one of them. Let's bring in this invert parameter now. Let's invert the left mix. That means it's back to front. So when I do this, one side goes up, the other side goes down, you know. So you can do kind of ping pong things by inverting one side of two related parameters. Okay, but let's do something different. Let's invert the left and right feedback. Now what happens is, as I turn up the amount of mix, the more mix I get, the less feedback I get. The less mix I get, the more feedback I get. So at low levels of mix, I get the most feedback. Yeah. But when I get more mix, I get less feedback. Less mix, more feedback. So again, you can use the invert to invert two sets of related parameters to do whatever special effects you can think of. Okay. Okay, so lastly, we've looked at all the different extra smart features, you know, the minimum, maximum range, invert, what have you. Let's look at the scaling now. Okay, these kind of different shape scaling maps. Remember I showed you that at the beginning when we had this synth here, and I was controlling the LFO rate through this strange map which allowed me to jump between different LFO speeds, right? Remember that? Okay, so let's look at the scaling now. This is a deep one actually. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to use the final output and do a fade out. Okay, so let's crunch things up a bit so we've got more depth. Let's extend this final output track like that, and then let's copy this over so we've got a bit more play. Okay, here's the final output. I'm going to choose the main volume. Okay, I'm doing track automation, directly controlling the fader. I'm not controlling the volume control here on the smart control panel. Okay, this is the final output track, controlling the final output left right mix. Yeah. Okay, and I'm now going to write some track automation in to control the fader directly. So I put in a node. Yeah, I've chosen main volume. Right, I put in a node, and this needs to be at 0 dB. So I move it until it's, there you go, 0 dB. Right up at the very top, look, the fader gets rammed right up to plus 6 dB. So I need to set this to, there we go, 0. Then I put in another node there at 0. Then my final node here. Okay, that's a fade out, a straight linear fade out. Now, this bit of track automation here is controlling the fader directly, but you will see this smart control move because this smart control is assigned here to the fader. So this bit of track automation is controlling the fader, turning it down, and this smart control will move because it's simply following the fader because it's assigned to it. Okay, but we're actually controlling the fader direct. We're doing a straight linear fade out. Here we go. and watch the fader. Watch the fader, the way it fades out. Same speed. The same speed all the way. It creeps out at the same speed. A fade out. But fade outs don't necessarily work like that. Okay, if you've actually listened to a fade out, you know, if you want to be an engineer or producer or whatever, perhaps you should go and listen to some fade outs, because they don't always do this thing where they just go downhill, 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 creep out at the same speed. Actually, they do something more like this. I'm going to exaggerate this, right? But a classic kind of fade out, like in the old days they used to do by hand, more is like that. You're listening to the song and it gets towards the end and you just hear the fade out begins. Now in the old days when they did a fade out by hand, the guy would just creep the fader down just a little bit with his hand. And you go, oh, I noticed the level just dropped a fraction there. It started to turn down, so the fade out's beginning. But it fades out very slowly, just a tiny bit at a time, tiny bit, just creeps out for a couple of bars, hardly turns down at all, and then it accelerates how fast it's turning down over the next couple of bars, and then it slows down, and for the final bars, maybe 3-4 bars, or even more, it creeps out, very slowly turning down to silence. So you get a very subtle turning down for the first few bars, then it speeds up how fast it's turning down for the next few bars, and then it slows down and makes the last few bars eke out little by little, so it fades out very gently, very slow speed for the last little bit. So you get most of the turning down happening in the middle of the fade out. Okay, nice subtle bit at the beginning, faster in the middle, and then a long creep out at the end. So yeah, more like that. Okay, now yes, we can build that fade out here, but check this out. Let's now do the fade out using the smart control. The smart control. So we choose now for the track automation, smart controls volume. Now we're writing track automation directly for this smart control, which is assigned to its parameter mapping to the volume. Okay, now one advantage of using a smart control for this is I can ram the first node right to the top. Now that should, if I wasn't using the minimum maximum range for the parameter, the volume fader, the maximum range should be plus 6 dB. So when this node is rammed right up to the top, the fader is at plus 6. Okay, and then we have to do the same faff of trying to get this down to 0, like carefully adjusting it till it's at 0. But we don't need to do that with smart controls. I can ram this right to the top as far as it will go, which tells this volume smart control to turn right to the top of its travel. But then I can use the maximum range to make sure that the maximum level for this smart control here equals 0 dB. So when I put this node in, bang right to the top, I haven't got to bother faffing around getting it. I've got to come on, I've got to get it exactly at 0. No, I ram the bugger right to the top. That tells this smart control to go right to the top, which equals 0 dB, because the maximum range has been set to 0 dB for the volume control, which this smart control is mapping to. Okay, so there's your first advantage. You haven't got to faff around being very delicate with the node. You just ram the bugger right to the top. That's 0 dB. Put the next node in, and then your final node. Okay, let's have a look at the scaling. We have a straight linear scaling. So this horizontal line turning down at the same speed all the time will turn this smart control pot down at the same speed, and it's sending its data out through this straight line to the fader. So this straight line translates into this straight line to control the fader. Here we go. And we get the same thing, a linear fade out. Okay, watch it down here. Watch the way the fader here fades out. It fades out at the same speed all the way down the line. Ready? Here we go. Here it goes. Down, down, down. Same speed, same speed. Okay, but now watch. I'm going to change this scaling map to this shape. And now what happens is, this track automation, this simple straight line from a high node to a low node, is going to tell this smart control to turn down in a straight linear turning down movement, but it will send its data through this curve to this fader. So this straight linear movement here will be translated into this curve for the fader. Watch the fader now. The fader will follow this curve. Ready, here we go. Watch the fader, creeping out, creeping out, creeping out. Now it speeds up, and now at the end it's creeping out, creeping out, creeping out, creeping out. Gone. Yeah? You see that? So without having to faff around making a curve on the track automation, we have a beautiful curve applied to this fader from a simple linear straight line. I don't have to faff around on the track automation making a complex curve. I just ram a node in at the top, ram a node in at the very bottom, and that translates to 0 dB down to silence and passing through this curve to give me a beautiful S-shaped fade out here. But I can change that to be more like that if I want. Here we go, let's try it like that. Here we go. Watch the fader. Turn down, turn down, turn down. Faster, faster, faster. Creep out, creep out, creep out, creep out, creep out. Silence. You know what I mean? We can do any shape we want. I mean, let's do something more crazy. Let's choose this, put in some steps. Like this look. What do you think is going to happen? Well, the fader, watch it. It turns down at first, turns down at first, turns down at first. Oh, the graphics, by the way, are completely knackered in these in this stupid Apple computers. But what actually happens is it'll follow this as this turns down. It works the ball works following the line if I use the smart control and turn that down. What will happen is this simple straight line between here and here will cause this smart control to turn down, and it's going to translate its simple downhill movement into that map here like a mountain, which will translate to the fader. So as this smart control turns down, the fader will turn down fast, then turn back up, then turn down. Let me move it over here so you can see them together. Watch. Ready? From the very top. Turn down, turn down, turn down, turn back up, turn back up, turn back down. So this straight line here on the track automation will make that shape apply to the fader. Here we go. But the graphics of the ball won't work. But watch the fader. It'll do this. Down, up, and down again. Ready? Here we go. Down, up, 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 and back down again. Yeah? You see what I mean? That's the beauty of these scalings. You can do subtle stuff with it, like the curve fade out I showed. But you can do radical stuff too. You know, really wacky stuff. You know, you can, a simple straight line in the track automation can make something that it's controlling turn down and then up and then down and then up and do whatever you like. I mean, if you wanted to, you could make it do. You could make a simple straight up down line. Do this. You can, I mean, you know, like this line from here to here is going to go down, up, down, up, down, up on the fader. Watch the fader. Ready? Here it goes. Down, up, down, up, down. Like that, yeah? You can do anything you like. You can translate simple linear lines between two simple nodes on your track automation could be translated into all sorts of wacky and wonderful movements for the things that you're actually controlling. Okay, just to look at these scalings, right? You can have the linear one like that, the curved one like that, or the S-shaped one. The curved one and the S-shaped one, which are dotted, the dotted bits can be moved, you know, curved in different ways. And in the case of this S-shape, the middle node can be moved. With this shaped one, you can change the curve. Right. In any of them, you can input a node. Now, on the ones that are already curved, dotted, if you put in a node, boom, it creates a straight line from the previous node to the node you just put in. But you can do Alt and click on the line to make it dotted. Like that. So I've got this shape now. Okay, so this straight line from here to here, from that node to node, will translate into that lovely curve. Here we go, which will be applied to the fader. Here we go. Down she goes, and then she just creeps up a bit. Up she comes, and then finally she curves out. Okay. Lovely. Okay, so on the straight line it's the same. I can put in a node, put in another node. I can make any of those lines dotted by Alt clicking on them, Alt clicking on them, Alt clicking on them. Make my own shapes, whatever I like. Yeah. Same with this curve. Put in a node, it creates a straight line between the node I just put in and the previous node. Alt, click on the line, it becomes curvable, whatever I like. This shape, put in a node, Alt, click on the line, it becomes curvable. Move the nodes around, make the curves whichever way you like. See what I mean? You can do anything you like. And they can be back to front ones like that, or like that. Yeah. And in the case, if we just go back to this one quickly, the delay there, where you have different parameters, multiple parameters, each one has its own layer, so to speak. So if we set them all to the straight line, straight line, straight line, come on, straight line, straight line. You can do things like this. Let's choose the stereo delay left mix. I will put in a node. They're laid on top of each other. I'll put in a node and another node, and I'll make that shape. That is the shape for my stereo delay left mix. I can then do copy, choose the right mix and paste so they're both the same. And now my delay left right mix are following that slight dogleg shape. So as I turn up they go up a bit, then they sort of do nothing for the next bit, they stay in a straight line and then go up at the end. Or I could make them for that bit go downhill a bit. Let's copy that one, paste it back to the left mix. So they do this. You turn up the delay and the left right mix goes up, 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 then turns down a little bit and then goes up again. Okay, then let's look at the left feedback. I'll apply a curve to that like that. I can again custom shape that into anything I want. I can make that shape if I want, and then I can copy that and paste it to the right feedback. Paste like that. They can be different, they don't have to be the same, they can all be different. But now I move it and the left right feedback goes up and then does a little back pedal and then up again. Like up to that peak, up and then back and then up again, But they don't have to be the same. You can make one different to the other. I'll make one like that and one like that. So then they're going to be different. Watch the left right feedback. One gets ahead of the other and the other one catches it up at the end. Because they've got different curves. Okay, so that's your scaling. Wunderbar. Yeah, it's deep scaling, and that's how I did this sawtooth thing here. I used the scaling. I just got this scaling. Don't want this fade out anymore. I got the scaling there. The LFO rate. I set the minimum range to 1/8 dotted. The minimum range for the LFO speed goes down to 16 bars and then creeps up a bar at a time. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, up to 1.5 bars, then 1 bar, then half a bar dotted and half a bar triplet, and then quarters and then eighths. So I reduced it so that the minimum was 1/8 dotted, so the lowest value was 1/8 dotted. My highest value, maximum range, was 1/8 triplet. So that gave me 1/8 dotted up to 1/8 triplet, but lying in between those values, let's make it a straight line again. Lying in between those values, there is a quarter. Okay, look, let's open the synth. Okay, watch here. That's the value for the LFO. Now, right at the bottom of the scaling, we're at 1/8 dotted, minimum range, right? If I creep up just a little bit, and as the ball goes uphill, we hit 1/4 triplet. Now, I didn't want that speed of LFO. It carries on 1/4 triplet, quarter triplet, then it switches to an eighth, 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 then it switches to 16th dotted. From here up to there is 16th dotted. I don't want that. Then it jumps to 8th T. So what I did is I put in a node, click like that, made that go about 1/3 of the way across. Then I put in another node and made a step, and then another like that. And each step is about 1/3 of the way across, and then I just brought this down until it said an eighth. So that horizontal line is an eighth. Oops, come on. Like that. Oh. 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 There we go. Oh, no. Okay. This horizontal line here, that is an eighth. This horizontal line there is an eighth dotted. Okay. Oh. So when I move this pot up, it will leap up that cliff there quickly from an eighth dotted to an eighth triplet, missing out the quarter triplet that's in the middle here somewhere. Then it will follow that horizontal line and then suddenly jump up to an eighth triplet at the end. So eighth dotted, it leaps up to an eighth and then leaps up to an eighth triplet. It bypasses the quarter triplet here and it bypasses the 16th dotted around there by using these big steps. See, there's all sorts of things you can do with the scaling, okay? That is your scaling, and that just leaves a few last little bits and bobs to talk about. Okay, and lastly, I just want to show you the hardware controller implementation for these smart controls. And sadly, it's really badly implemented. It's a complete pig's ear actually, but anyway, this is how it works. Look. Okay, let's say on this track, this is the smart control panel for this track, and the first 4 smart controls, I've got them set up assigned to certain parameters to do whatever, okay? And I think to myself, okay, every time I go to this track, I want to be able to control these 4 smart controls with 4 hardware controllers on my master keyboard. Now I've only got a typical home studio master keyboard, and it's only got a small selection of hardware controllers on it. Okay, so I don't have many hardware controllers available. Okay, so I think, okay, I want to set up the first 4 hardware controllers on my master keyboard to these 4 smart controls, the first 4 on this panel. So I do it. I go to external assignment here, choose my first smart control, I'd assign it to my first hardware controller, then the second one to my second hardware controller, third to the third hardware controller, and the fourth to my fourth hardware controller. Done. Okay, so on this smart control panel, my first 4 hardware controllers are controlling the first 4 smart controls. Okay, but the trouble is, now if I go to the smart control panel for any other track, my first 4 hardware controllers are controlling the first 4 smart controls on every panel for every other track. Look. 2, 3, 4. Look. 1, come on. 2, 3, 4. Every smart control panel now has my 4 hardware controllers assigned to the first 4 smart controls. There's nothing you can do about it. 1, 2, 3, 4. See what I mean? That's how it is. I assigned these first 4 smart controls, 1, 2, 3 and 4 on this panel to my first 4 hardware controllers, and now every single smart control panel has my 4 hardware controllers assigned to smart control number 1, 2, 3 and 4. And there's nothing you can do about it. If I want those 4 hardware controllers on this panel to be controlling these 4 parts, and on this panel to be controlling these 4 parts, I can't do that. I can't. If I go to this panel and assign my 4 hardware controllers to these 4 parts, then they will no longer be controlling these 4 parts on this panel. That's just how it is. Okay? There's nothing you can do about that. It's a complete pig's ear, as I say. Okay? But sadly, that's how it works. And I've looked into this. I've really looked into this to see if there's some way of getting around that, and I can't find any way around it. That's just how it is. It's really badly implemented, okay, so, but there you go. So that's why, another reason why these smart controls are a live performance tool. You know, you can't have different hardware controller assignments permanently on different panels. Different. You know, you go to one panel, you set up a hardware controller assignment to do a particular, you know, track automation right, or a live thing at a gig, and on another panel, you then set up a fresh hardware controller assignment to do, you know, track automation right from this panel or something, you know. But you can't have hardware controllers that you want on your system assigned to whichever smart controls you want on each individual panel. You can't do that. Okay, and that's how it is. So there you go. That's your smart controls, and I hope that's useful.